Good evening, everyone. Good evening. This is a public hearing of the Zoning Board of Appeals. My name is Violetta Cullen. The zoning ordinance empowers us to hear references from the City Council, petitions from other parties for variances and special uses, and appeals from the decisions of the zoning administrator. We hear testimony from those in attendance and then make formal findings of fact based on the evidence presented, which consists of testimony and exhibits, and on our knowledge of the community. We then either make a determination or a recommendation to the City Council. Testimony is taken under oath. Although we do not apply the strict rules of evidence and procedures, we ask that you keep your testimony relevant to the proposal as it relates to the standards contained in the zoning ordinance. When you testify, please state your name and address for the record and print your name on the sign-in sheet provided outside the door. Each case will be introduced by staff and a list of documents will be read into the record. Then the applicant will give an explanation of the proposal. After that, those who wish to testify as either proponents or opponents of the case will have the chance to do so, and then the applicant will have a chance to respond. Any case not concluded at tonight's hearing will be continued to our next meeting. Melissa, please call the roll.
Lisa Deacon.
Here.
Scott Gingold.
Present.
Violetta Cullen.
Present.
Mary Beth Burns. Mirna Aravallo.
Here.
Kirill Miranchev.
Here.
And Mary McCauley.
Here. I will now swear in anyone who plans to give testimony in any of the cases scheduled for tonight. Anybody that plans on speaking, will you please raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you will provide in connection with this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Melissa, you want to read the first case?
No approval.
Okay. The minutes, I'd like to make approval for the minutes of May 2nd, 2017.
I move we approve the minutes. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any old business? Okay, new business.
1324 to 1326 Dodge Avenue. Natanya Mintz, potential lessee, applies for a special use permit for a commercial indoor recreation facility, Sharp Edge CrossFit. 1324 to 1326 Dodge Avenue is located in the I-2 General Industrial District, which requires a special use permit for a commercial indoor recreation facility to operate. Zoning Code Section 614.3.3. The Zoning Board of Appeals makes a recommendation to City Council, the determining body for this case. Documents included as part of the record include special use application submitted May 12th, 2017, standards form, plat of survey, property site plan, business summary, interior site plans, image of property, aerial view of property, zoning map of property, and Dapper meeting minutes excerpt of May 24th, 2017.
Is anybody here for this case? Please approach the stand. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Natanya Mintz, 1717 Ridge, Evanston, Illinois, 60201.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You want to tell us about your project?
Yes, so I'm looking to open a CrossFit gym at 1324, 1326 Dodge. It's Dodge, right? Not
Dodge, yes.
Okay. The business is, I don't know if any of you are familiar with CrossFit, but there's scheduled 1-hour classes with gym and fitness instruction. I would be the lead coach, instructor, trainer. Typically, these gyms usually open around 5:30 in the morning, and then last classes are around 6:30 or 7 p.m. They're 1-hour classes, and it's not the entire day. It's a few in the morning, maybe 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and then a few more in the later evening. We use weights. We're going to have a rig where you can do pull-ups and squat racks. It's kind of a it's a pretty bare bones kind of gym facility. It's nothing like a 24-hour fitness or a Lifetime Fitness. It's just mostly open, empty space for us to be able to work out with free weights, barbells, and then other than the rig, the pull-ups, where you do the pull-ups and whatnot, it's just open space. We do play music. I mean, it's not it's not offensively loud. And then the space also has 6 garage doors, which was my biggest appeal, because it'll be nice in the summer when you can open the doors and have that nice air circulation. They're also glass doors, so even when they're closed, it'll have so much sunlight. It'll be amazing. But that's a quick summary, I guess, of what I envision my CrossFit to look like.
So can you talk a little bit about the business itself? As I understand it from the application, it's taught by classes?
Yeah. So a class is anywhere from 1 people to 10 people or so. It's never going to get so big that an instructor can't handle the class, so that's why the classes are usually kept small. Do you want to know like the structure of the class, or
How many classes go on at a time?
1?
Okay.
1 at a time.
So the most clients that will be in the gym at a time is 10? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And 1 instructor?
Yeah.
Okay. And is it a membership
Yes.
service? Okay.
Yes. Monthly memberships.
So can people who are members come and use the facilities when they're not in a class?
No. They have to sign up for the class and be a part of the class.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a revolving door. So if there's no class going on, then, unless I'm there doing work or something, then the doors could be closed. No one should ever come to the gym and expect to go work out if they're not coming to a class.
And how many employees will be on site at a time?
Mostly just me. Right now I have 2 other people who will coach, but they're going to be there when they're coaching their classes. So
So you and an instructor?
I am the instructor. So
Okay.
literally just me.
So you are
when
the
I
only
open.
instructor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have 2 other coaches, but they're going to coach their classes, and probably only a few times a week.
When they're coaching their classes, will you be there as well?
I'll probably be there,
Okay.
but I won't necessarily be there.
So figure you, an instructor, and up to 10 clients that will be there at a given time?
Yes.
So can you talk about where these people will park?
So there is parking there. I think there's sufficient parking there. Oftentimes with CrossFit gyms, people run or jog or bike to their gyms anyway. But there's definitely enough parking there that I've seen for people to use it.
Is it a lot?
Yeah, there's a lot. I don't know how many spaces are for 1324 and 1326, but the rest of the whole thing is vacant right now. So, until there are other tenants in the building, there are probably 25 or 30 spots there.
Does your lease permit you to use the lot?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you clarify about the lot? Because it seems like there's 2 separate lots there with the walkway between. Does that building just include the 1 lot on the north side?
The walkway between, do you mean which? I'm not sure which walkway you mean.
Do you see, there's sort of like 2 separate parking lots when I was on site. And I was unclear if
Like
both
next
parking.
to each other, or
Yeah.
one behind the other?
It's an L-shaped lot, and so there's a parking lot along your side, and then there's a parking lot around the corner by the other building.
When you say around the corner, do you mean the west side of the building?
Yeah,
So it's not my understanding that I have that, and I didn't
Right.
intend to use that. 'Cause
Right.
And those spots are filled right now with cars, so I assume that that's not mine.
And you're only, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
you're only leasing half of 1326
24,
and all of 1326?
yes.
Okay.
If you look at an old site plan of the entire property that's up on the screen, so this is the building here, so this is the CrossFit area, and then these are all parking spaces along here, and then this is all still part of the same property that has parking all the way along here and coming down towards here. And then right here,
Who's that?
that's a McDonald's parking lot.
Thank you. Okay. And so then as a part of your lease, do you have a specific number of spots that are included in your lease? Because presumably and hopefully those additional spots in that, that flex space will lease up over time. So how many spots are included in your lease?
I
terms?
don't know that number right now.
I have a question. You indicated in your description before Dapper that everything would take place inside except for people might run in the neighborhood. And my experience from the 2 CrossFit gyms that have been in one of our properties in our neighborhoods is that people sometimes ran in the neighborhood with very large tires. and it actually, they would run in groups with very large tires and other heavy equipment, and it sometimes created blockades on the sidewalks and a little bit of disruption.
Okay.
So I just was a little concerned about that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny you bring up tires because everyone always associates CrossFits with tires, and it's because of gyms like that. And it's like the last thing on my list to get ever is a tire. So when we run, it's going to be, you're running. You're not, certainly not carrying tires around, maybe kettlebells, but if there's any, possibility of being disruptive, then certainly not. I've been doing CrossFit for 4.5 years, and I've coached at and worked out at gyms in all kinds of neighborhoods and cities and what have you, and I know when it's appropriate and how it's appropriate to run in the neighborhood and when and where it's not. So I certainly do not want to infringe on these neighborhoods.
Right. I mean, certainly when ETHS gets out, that becomes a really congested sidewalk. A lot of people going down to McDonald's and that type of thing. So
we can, adjust the workouts based on when they're leaving school and the traffic in the area easily.
yeah, there are places to run, but there are also areas of heavy congestion on the sidewalks there. So maybe working a running route that takes those considerations into account would be a good
Definitely.
idea.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a question. So you're going to build out this space, like completely change it? The inside of it? Not really?
It's pretty empty right now, except there are some oil tanks in there that need to be removed. We're getting rid of the wall that's separating 1326 and 1324, and then we're going to build another wall to separate 1324 in half. But other than that, there's already like perfect office space and bathrooms in 1326, and we're leaving all of that. So the biggest thing is taking that wall down, but other than that, we're keeping it big open space.
And you're going to keep those garage doors where it was auto repair?
Yes.
And I like the idea of you having open when it's nice outside. That'd be a great workout. I just wondered, what type of music do you play?
I like country. I mean, most people don't like working out to country, so hip hop, pop. I don't like rock either, so I'm not going to play that. But
Well, it's not like it's a residential neighborhood, but I just wondered if you had the doors open, what hours would you be playing music like that? I mean, it faces the drive-through, and it's pretty commercial. I just wondered when you would have the music playing with the doors open.
The music will be playing if the doors are open and it's early in the morning or late at night. Again, I do not want to offend anyone in the neighborhood or impose on anyone in the neighborhood. So either the music would certainly be turned down or the doors would just be closed if the music, for whatever reason, were loud enough to, that other people could hear it and it was early in the morning. Does that answer your question? I mean, usually
Well, when's your earliest class? Is
5 o'clock or 5:30.
And then your latest class is?
6:30 or 7.
So it wouldn't be in the evening so much?
Yeah, no, 6:30 or 7 would be the latest.
Yeah.
So.
It's just that the Evanston noise ordinance is 7
Okay.
a.m.
No more music after 7 or?
in the morning,
Oh, okay.
right before you can start making
But with the garage doors closed?
probably not a problem.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
then that's fine.
Yeah, okay. Just wondered.
Yeah.
Can you describe what's an assault air bike?
That's the worst piece of equipment ever. Oh yeah, it was in there, isn't it? It's just a bike. It's just a stationary bike.
Okay, it's
But
stationary,
stationary bike.
inside the facility.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought you heard it somewhere else and you were asking me for clarification because it's
No.
It's worse than a stationary bike. For whatever reason, I don't know how they manufactured it, but your arms are going and your legs are going and just everything hurts. So.
One point of clarification, I thought I understood in the Dapper minutes that you were going to be applying for a storefront modernization grant, but then it says that no changes are being planned to the exterior. So is that true that you're applying for a storefront modernization grant, and how would those monies be used if the exterior is not being changed?
The way that grant is written now is that it could apply to interior improvements also.
Okay.
So other than signage, which I do think is included in that grant, everything's going to be used for the interior.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about, you said that you've been a part of CrossFit for 4 years, like what sort of business experience you have with CrossFit or running gyms or, coaching in this kind of capacity?
I've never owned a gym. I have an MBA and a JD from Marquette, and I've coached CrossFit for for about 4 years now at different gyms. I mean, I can just tell you that I've coached at so many gyms and learned so many things from so many different gym owners. CrossFit's not a franchise; it's everyone's own business. So everyone runs their gym very differently. I feel like I've absorbed a lot, and I've been conscious of how people run their businesses because I want to open my own. So I'm confident that I can do this well, despite not having had a gym before. I don't know if that helps. If that answers your question.
How long is the period of the lease?
It's 3 years with 2 one-year options.
Any other questions?
No.
No. Do you have anything else to say about your case?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. We're going to close the record for our private deliberation.
Okay, thanks.
Does anybody else here want to speak on this case? Okay, thank you. Yes.
I think it's vacant space. I think this is an appropriate business coming into a commercial area. I think it's a good reuse of the space.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good use.
I agree. In terms of conditions that we would impose, as we normally do for special uses, should we discuss that?
Yes.
Are the hours of operation appropriate, Melissa, for that area? 5 a.m. to...
Those are pretty typical hours of the surrounding businesses, but I would suggest that some later hours for the music if the doors are open.
Well, another condition I would say is that I don't know that we need to condition it, but that they comply with the Evanston noise ordinance, and that would impose its own hours, wouldn't it?
It would. If they were to violate that, they could get tickets from the police. It would be more appropriate to have a condition in the special use as well.
So the hours of operation from 5 until when is appropriate for this special use?
Probably 11 p.m.
And so then with a requirement that the doors be closed in order to operate music from like before 7 a.m. and after what time?
I would suggest 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. I mean, the other businesses in the area are still open at that time, but the noise ordinance is in effect.
Okay.
And does that say 7 to 7? That noise ordinance?
I believe so.
I think so too.
Melissa?
Spoken like someone that's gotten called on it.
I call on it all the time.
On another question, the applicant mentioned that there are USTs in the property. And so has zoning looked at proper remediation if those are removed?
It's not a zoning issue, so I really can't speak to it. As part of any permit process and whatnot, that would have to be addressed.
Okay, so that would, when there is a permit requested to remove the USTs, which usually there is, isn't there?
If they wanted to remove the USTs, they'd have to go through a whole separate process, not just
Well,
for a
that's
permit.
I think
but-
that's the Illinois EPA, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, I just, for the tenants, the applicant's own safety to know that that's properly addressed. And I suppose that's a leasing issue more than anything, though. It doesn't affect your application.
I don't know if this is relevant, but the tanks are all empty. There's no oil in them. They're empty, so someone already got rid of the oil.
Yeah, sometimes there's sometimes there's,
She's not buying the property, so.
right. But when you remove them, it sometimes exposes hazards that you didn't know were underground. Oh, they're not underground. Okay, never
They're
mind.
just STs. So and then parking, I guess, as a condition that that the employees not use street parking, which it doesn't sound like will be a problem, but I think we should still attach the condition since it's ambiguous how many spaces in the parking lot will come with the lease.
How about trash? No issue.
Right.
Right. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. I'm going to read the standards for special use. These are the standards for the special use. Number one, the requested special use is one of the special uses listed in the zoning ordinance. I believe that it is. Correct, Melissa?
Correct.
Okay. Number two, the requested special use is in keeping with the purposes and policies of the comprehensive general plan and the zoning ordinance as amended from time to time. I do believe the comprehensive plan in this case is geared toward a business use, and this is a business use. Number three, the requested special use will not cause a negative cumulative effect when its effect is considered in conjunction with the cumulative effect of various special uses of all types in an immediate neighborhood and the effect of the proposed type of special use upon the city as a whole. Does everyone agree? That standard hasn't been met. Number four, the requested special use does not interfere with or diminish the value of property in the neighborhood. I think this would improve the property, so the standard has been met. Number five, the requested special use can be adequately served by public facilities and services, other than the question for the parking, which is probably going to be able to be covered. I think that standard has been met. Number six, the requested special use does not cause undue traffic congestion. If the parking is done in congestion in accordance with this testimony, I believe that that standard has been met as well. Any other questions? Any comments? Would someone like to make the motion?
I'll make the
Oh,
motion.
I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I have a couple more. The requested special use preserves significant historical and architectural resources. I think that that's not applicable in this case because of the building. Number eight, the requested special use preserves significant natural and environmental features. Other than Mary's question about the tanks, I think that this standard has been met. Any questions?
I don't think this one's applicable.
Not applicable. The requested special use complies with all other applicable regulations of the district in which it is located and other applicable ordinances except to the extent such regulations have been modified through the plan development process or the grant of a variation. I believe that has been met.
I agree. In particular, we discussed a condition that would allow it to be met with respect to the noise ordinance.
Right. Okay. Now that should be all of them. Anybody want to make this motion?
I'll move in the matter ZBA 17 ZMJV 0042 with respect to the application for 1324 to 1326 Dodge Avenue that we recommend to City Council to approve the special use requested on the condition that it come with a restriction on hours of operation from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. and that a further restriction on the playing of music with the garage doors open between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. only in compliance with the noise ordinance, and that employees of the facility be prohibited from using street parking during the hours of operation, and that the property otherwise be developed and run in accordance with the documents and testimony submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Congratulations. Okay, next case, 1410 Wellesley Street.
Andrew Andrew and Linda Mendelssohn, property owners, appeal the zoning administrator's decision to partially deny minor zoning relief, case number 17 ZMNV 0022, to construct a one-story sunroom addition in the R1 single-family residential district. The applicant was granted minor zoning relief to allow 7 feet between a principal structure, the house, and an accessory structure, the detached garage, where 10 feet is required, zoning code section 6462C, but denied minor zoning relief for 32.1% building lot coverage where a maximum 30% is allowed, zoning code section 6827. The Zoning Board of Appeals is the determining body for this case. Documents included as part of the record include appeal application submitted April 26, 2017, standards form, minor variance application submitted March 13, 2017, staff findings of fact or standards of minor variation denial, zoning analysis, plat of survey, site plans, elevations, minor variation public notice, minor variation final determination notice, images of property from applicant, aerial view of property, zoning map of property.
Mr. Mendelssohn, you want to talk about your case?
Yes, thank you. I have a couple of letters from neighbors that I wish to.
These will be exhibit, what, Melissa? 1 and 2 to your case. Give us 1 second to review.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Has everyone read the attachment?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I think we've read it.
Okay. All right, thank you. We appreciate the time and attention you're giving to this matter. This is basically a request to allow us to add a relatively minimal addition to our house to further the functionality of our primary living space, which is the family room of our home. Throughout our tenure in this house, and we've been 35-year Evanston residents, coming up on 19 years on this property, we've done nothing but improve this property with 2 significant additions and a lot of really nice landscaping in order to keep in the character of the neighborhood, the character of the house itself, which is a center entry brick colonial, and the quality of detailing and construction that such a house deserves. It is true that we added on in 1999 and apparently unwittingly created an issue with one of the criteria of zoning, and this concept of self-creation, which quite frankly I consider myself a pretty smart guy and I still don't really understand what that means. As you can tell from the property, the 2-story residence that's not hashed was the original house and the brick garage. We are able to have access from Wellesley Street, as the homes on the south side of Wellesley Street have. That provides a certain amount of restriction on the buildable area of the home, and that family room addition that is at the south end of the house, that was really the only place where that addition could go. Previously, the house had a very small kitchen, kind of a small maid's room, and had no family room space at all. So that addition accommodated a kitchen, a family room with the dining function within the family room. It's a nice house. It was built in 1929, but we all know that what worked in 1929 does not necessarily work in 2017, and even what was done in 1999 doesn't necessarily function properly for our needs in 2017. We are doing this project to improve the functional use of that family room space. We have 2 adult children who live in the area. Both are imminently going to be married and planning children of their own. We anticipate having a role in helping to care for our future grandchildren, and we have a pretty good idea as to what kind of functional space we need to have in our house, and we have determined that this is the place where that needs to go. The area of the addition, which is described in the staff report as a patio, is actually a raised stone deck with an existing brick wall and a full concrete foundation below it. It was designed to be solid and for the potential of enclosure initially as a porch, we thought, but now we would like it to be a permanent room. It's a space that is usable for us as an outdoor patio on days like we've had today and perhaps over the last week, but as we know with our climate here in Evanston, not very many months of the year. So we're looking to capture that space for functionality throughout the year. I do have a series of photographs of the property to demonstrate the character of the house, the extent of the landscaping, and to demonstrate the minimal to no impact that this addition will have. It's going to basically be an extension of the existing home as is indicated on the elevations. The brick wall remains in place. The rest of the wall surface is going to be glass. And so here's a view of that existing raised area behind that tree. This is where the addition is going to go. And it will not require any foundation work because of the way the existing foundation is in place and the way the structure of the floor is going to be cantilevered off the south end. There's a view looking back towards the house, and you can see the character of the home. So the floor will come even with the existing French doors. Those doors will come out, and the space will come out towards us in this photo. The next picture. Yes.
Can I stop you there for
Yes.
just a second? So will the, because I think that what's important here is just how, again, you say that the 32%, the 2% is a very small
Yes.
amount of space. And so I'm trying to understand, staff had proposed a compromise that you reduce the size of the addition in order to stay within the 30% lot coverage that's required by the zoning. So would the addition extend to the end of that bottom step or just out to where the brick wall is, concurrent with the foundation underneath? I'm trying to understand
Sure.
what the compromise is that the city has proposed.
Right. The ordinance at 30% lot coverage allows about a 7-foot addition from the point of that door, so it's probably about the edge of that rug. And what we are requesting is going out about an additional 9 feet, so it's going to extend about 2 feet past that lowest step in this direction. So for us, to add
Just so I
7
understand,
Yes.
to re-summarize.
Yes.
You're saying the city is proposing that it could only, in order to stay within 30%, you could only extend it 7 feet past the existing rear doors there?
Correct.
And you want to go 16 feet past?
That's correct. There's a couple other things in the city's analysis that I'll get to in a minute.
One more question, I'm sorry. Because presumably then it is a reasonably significant distance beyond the end of the patio where, as it stands now. And since the patio steps down to another outdoor space, then the bulk of the structure going up to the ceiling will be greater. Is that right?
Right. I mean, right.
So
it'll
the
match
ceilings
height of
the ceilings at the rear of the space, presuming that you're going to excavate the patio down to ground level?
No, I'm sorry, we're not. We are going right over the top of it. That stone itself may be removed and filled in with concrete, but there's going to be, as you can see, there's a pretty good sized step up into the family room. There's going to be wood joists that are going to come, and they're going to be supported on a wall that's going to be built off the step, and that's going to enable a cantilever.
Okay.
And the height is going to be the same height as the house itself, is the
Yeah,
family room.
right.
So it's not going to be taller, right? I mean, and can I just clarify one thing? 7 feet is, I thought from what I read, was not from the French doors, but if you can see how it comes out on an angle, I think the 7 feet came from the front, from the windows on the side.
It follows the line of the bay.
Right. Oh, okay.
So this is described in the application as a sunroom that you're building. Is that functionally what it is?
It's functionally an extension of the family room. I just picked a name for the floor plan. So it's going to be a sunny room. It faces south, and it has a lot of exposure. So it's probably why I called it a sunroom.
What's the existing dimensions of the family room?
Approximately 14 by 20.
And what do you use that space for now?
Dining room and TV watching area, and it opens up out onto the kitchen. There's a counter on the kitchen that opens up with a seating area there as well.
It's like a great room, but the kitchen is not an eat-in kitchen. So the kitchen overlooks the great room by a counter.
It's an open floor plan.
Open
Right.
floor plan.
Yeah.
But because it's not an eating kitchen, the table is actually in the family room part. So you've got a table, you've got a 3-seater couch and a 2-seater couch. So it creates a space. So it's very tight because it encompasses so many rooms.
But there is a separate dining room besides the
Yes.
family
Like
room.
a center entry colonial house.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
Yeah, you walk
Yeah.
in, dining room.
Yep.
Can you describe what the nature of the hardship you're facing is as a result of the uniqueness of your property?
Well, the property is restricted by the, proximity of the driveway access and the garage itself that were in place when we bought the house. It's simply we designed this space, and I'll correct the dimensions. They look like it's 19.6 by 18 on the outside, so it's somewhat less than that on the inside. And we built what we thought would be functional 20 years ago or 18 years ago, and it is no longer functional for us because of the furniture we have in there and the way we live.
Did I read the application correctly? Part of this same application, you replaced your garage? No?
No. That was a two-part application, and the distance between the proposed addition and the garage wall is 7 feet.
Gotcha. I
Where
misread that.
separation
Thank
is
you.
normally 10, and that portion was granted. The April 26 memo that Melissa read out, I was given a copy of that, and I'm prepared to respond to that. Additionally, in your packet is a memo dated June 1st of 2017, which I had not seen until it was published on the website. I'm familiar with the 5 standards of minor variation. We've been told that items 1, 3, and 5 are not met. The first being the practical difficulty is not self-created. Again, having a hard time quite understanding that. The reason was the fact that we did an addition, and as I said, we did that addition, 18 years ago when we knew what we knew at the time about the way we lived, and we built what we could afford. And so if that's the self-creation, there's not much more I can say about that. I think the staff acknowledges that the project will not have an adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of the adjoining properties. The shorter letter that you've received is from our immediate neighbor to our east. They are the only property that really looks out onto our property, and they are supportive of that. In addition, my neighbor Carl Bova is here, who wrote the other letter, and he will speak to that, the points he's made in that letter. I will disagree with the staff's statement that we have not met the standard as far as keeping with the comprehensive general plan and the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance does allow variance in 6.3.8.3a. The variances are allowed up to 35% on a lot coverage situation. What we are asking for on a percentage basis is 7%. We're asking for an additional 2% as compared to the 30%, which is 7%. And my reading of the zoning ordinance is that you're allowed to make a decision up to 35%. And then item number 5, the requested variation requires the least deviation from the applicable regulation amongst the feasible options identified before the zoning administrator issues his or her decision regarding said variation. This is where I was very surprised with the content of the June 1st internal memo.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm not sure I'm following the June 1st memo. I see the April 26th memo, and I want to make sure I'm clear on which June 1st memo you're referring to. Melissa, is that also in our packet here?
He means the staff memo to the zoning board. That's at the front of the packet.
Thank you. Okay, I thought there was something else that I was missing.
I'm sorry if I wasn't clear.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
I think what I'm surprised about is the extent of critique of our floor plan and the recommendations for the way we utilize our space. I certainly would have been happy to discuss this with anyone. I did not realize that the actual architectural floor plan was a matter of such relevance. At the bottom of the second page, had this, referring to the 1999 edition, had this addition been constructed, the current sunroom proposal would be compliant with building lot coverage. I mean, had that not been constructed, this project wouldn't even exist. Okay, so the sunroom is being added to that addition. There's also, there's the mention above that about a modest 150 square foot addition. That's the 7 feet times the width of that space. Is simply not usable to us, and we would not do the project with that minor amount of floor space. As you know, construction is expensive on a per square foot basis, and it gets even more expensive per square foot the smaller you get. On the next page, there's commentary about sunrooms and whether or not, single-family properties in Evanston normally have sunrooms. I don't really understand the relevance of that. And then there's a discussion about the sunroom, the sunroom off the living room at the bottom could be demolished, and then the property could construct a 260-foot sunroom off the family room. Well, that sunroom is part of the 1929 original house, and there's a second floor above it. So that is simply not practical, not feasible, not even possible.
You can get to the garage.
So anyway, it's...
I'm sorry. I'm confused again.
Mm-hmm.
The sunroom that is part of the 1929 original home, I thought that the staff had indicated you had added a sunroom in 1999? That's not the same sunroom we're talking about here.
No, a sunroom was not added in 1999. What was added in 1999 is that family room.
Oh, I
upper
see. So
left.
the
sunroom on the bottom off the living room is original construction.
I got it. Okay. Thank you.
And it doesn't function as a sunroom. We use it as a den or an office. So again, it's nomenclature.
A can I just interrupt and say that you can't tear that down because the driveway is by the side. And if you tore it down,
Well-
or if you even thought of expanding it, you could never take a car and get the car into the garage. It's like an apron there, so you just couldn't get in. The driveway is as wide as one single car, so.
So, anyway, we've gone through we spent most of this year going through the process. We had every expectation of having this approved at the administrative level. Understand from the documentation why it wasn't. It was surprising. So here we are. Again, it's relatively insignificant, particularly relative to a few other properties that have been improved almost on the immediate block. To orient you to those, and I'll ask Mr. Bova to speak to that a little more thoroughly. Melissa, if you could scroll ahead to some of those aerial shots. Okay, so this first photo locates our property with the red dot up there. And then call attention to a property more in the lower right-hand corner of the photo, which will show up on the next, if you scroll down a little bit. It's a little bit hard to read. At 1319 Lincoln, which appears to have lot coverage of over 40%. And I was unable to find in the archives the meeting minutes or any of the plans, but there's precedent for allowing additional lot coverage on our immediate block almost. So.
You don't know anything about the case that granted a variation for that property?
I do not.
Do you, Melissa?
I don't off the top of my head. I could quickly pull something together while you guys are talking if you'd like.
Is it relevant?
I don't know that it is, because every variation case is dependent on the property and the application that's submitted. But if the applicant thinks it's relevant, then he couldn't find it. So I don't know. I don't believe it is, but the applicant does.
Would you like us to find it, sir?
No, that's not important. I don't pretend to understand all the criteria that come into it. I appreciate that these are individual decisions based on the property and the merits of the particular application.
That's right.
Well,
Thank you.
perhaps we can ask staff if there have been variations granted for lot coverage in excess of the 30% minimum when there is large-scale acceptance and even enthusiasm on the part of the neighbors. And I understand that there are zoning ordinances for a reason. And so I get that at a certain point you have to say we have the zoning ordinance in effect for this reason, but there are variances granted. Have there been, I know that just recently we had a case where the hardship that was claimed was questioned because the owner had built a garage that was closer to the house. And he claimed, and we affirmed his claim, that he had not anticipated at that time that his family would grow so much, and then the garage was where the garage was, and then that created the hardship for the addition. So I guess that people do put on a small addition and then their circumstances change. Have there been a significant number of instances where zoning has allowed a variance in excess of 30% of lot coverage for these unanticipated changes in family?
There have. It ultimately comes down to a number of reasons why. Is the property itself substandard in lot size, so that 30% limitation is smaller than what the zoning ordinance anticipated? What is the addition for? What kind of room is it for? How does that fit in with the rest of the house? Does the house already have a room like that? It's all of those things combined, which is why, to Scott's point, they really are on a case-by-case basis. But absolutely, there have been variances granted for building lot coverage as minor variations that are staff determinations, and then anything that is beyond 40.5% automatically comes to the zoning board. You guys have seen some of those cases as well.
I have a question for the applicant. Can you describe what your process has been with the, I assume you've had an architect on board as a part of this project?
You're looking at them.
Excellent. Can you describe your process in looking at other options to expand the property so that it more fully meets the family's needs that would then still be in alignment with the maximum lot coverage? What other alternatives have you considered?
There really only is one alternative, and that would be to extend that same room out a smaller dimension. There's, again, we're looking for contiguous family living space where, the open great room effect and just making it more functional for us. It would not be logical for us to expand, that original sunroom or expand the dining room or any other area on the first floor.
Why wouldn't those options make sense?
Because they are remote from where the primary living spaces in the house, where we spend most of our time.
But in addition, it's a 1929 Center Henry colonial house, and it would pretty much compromise the integrity of the original house. But to do something in the front like that, it would destroy the appeal of that type of a home from 1929. Also, we can't do anything going to the west because that's where,
Well, we're up against the side lot line, yeah.
Against the side line. And anything going to the east, we can't do anything because we wouldn't be able to get into our garage. So we're kind of landlocked on east and west. We can only go south, and we don't want to go north for the reasons that I just mentioned. I also just want to reiterate that, we're also not taking away any green space. We're utilizing space that's already built, that's got a concrete foundation to it. So, and I think that's really an important thing, that we still have that.
Well, there's a separate zoning point for the pervious space, and that doesn't seem to be implicated here.
Correct.
It's just a lot coverage issue.
Right.
Yeah, okay. But I also think that this is a project that does not negatively affect any neighbor visually even. I mean, this is going to be glass enclosed. This property at 1319 doesn't even have windows. I mean, it's a box. It's a big, solid box. It just keeps going and going and going. And this is an aesthetically, appealing project to anyone who can go and see it. And I mean, we would have to invest a lot of money in windows and sliding glass doors and things like that to make it appealing to us and to anyone else. So,
how many square feet is existing right now on your house, including the garage?
including the garage.
Because that's your total coverage.
Yeah, I have to look at the analysis, which I have right here. Existing lot coverage is 2250.
And it's a standard lot?
On a 7,500 square foot lot. I'm sorry, I'm reading off the right. Existing lot area is 7,500, existing coverage is 2134.9. So existing lot coverage is 28.5. Proposed is 2404 at 32.1%. It's in the zoning analysis review sheet.
And just to clarify, so the lot size is 7,500 square feet. The required lot size for that zoning district is 7,200 square feet. And then the building lot coverage numbers that were given, that is for the footprint of all structures. So that is including square footage of the garage, and it is not counting all floors together, only the footprint.
Because we're talking about 236 square feet for the new addition.
Correct.
And in order for you to get to your, what is it, 35%?
32.1.
30% is the maximum.
Okay.
So it's, the city's proposal was to limit the addition to 150 additional square feet, and the applicant is requesting 236.
Correct. So it'd be 136 feet difference?
Is the variance, yes,
Yes.
approximately. The other photos that we have are just kind of, showing the area around, just showing the extensiveness of the landscaping. Again, as to Linda's point about no negative impact on neighbors or the neighborhood.
So just to clarify that point, so they are requesting 236 square feet. The city was proposing 150 square feet
So
in
now-
order to stay at that maximum lot coverage, so a difference of 86 square feet.
Okay, so 86 square feet.
So I have a question.
Yes.
You are using existing foundations to a certain extent.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
You still will need to pour additional foundations of about 9 feet forward and then enclose the foundation.
We can do that. We don't need to do that from a structural standpoint. I have not gotten very, in many in-depth discussions with the building department about that. I know there will need to be probably a post of some kind, a concrete tube in the ground to deal with the steps that will come off the back of that. But the house itself, it is designed so that I don't need to pour foundation to support it.
My point is that the dimensions of the new addition are a kind of not relevant to the existing foundation. You are extending it.
Right.
There is, for part of the addition, we
will be extending beyond the existing foundation, right.
The second question that I have, which is my concern, is what will happen with the patio? Will you extend the patio? Are you going to extend your impervious surface?
We are not. We are going to, right now there's a 2-level patio, the upper one, which we've been talking about, and then as you go down, there's a pretty good size patio that's part of the impervious calculation, and we are not going to provide any further impervious surface.
Because we have seen cases, and like probably you mentioned and you noticed, that people come doing some kind of addition or some kind of impervious surface, then they come again for another addition, then there's the next owner, and he says, okay, but I want something else, and it is an avalanche that at the end of the day worsens everything, not only in this lot, but in the neighborhood, because people need both living area, but they need free space and planting and all these things. I appreciate the planting that you did already, but I am concerned not to allow an avalanche of actions that will actually worsen the situation regarding free space and all these things. That's why there's nothing to do at the moment, but I have a kind of appeal to you. not to extend things that you should not extend, no matter what our decision is tonight.
Right. I appreciate and respect that perspective, and going through this process, I'm aware of the limitations that we have, and I will respect that.
Can I ask, you've labeled it a sunroom, but you've said that it's space you need for your anticipated grandkids. What is it that you plan to do in the space with your grandkids that requires the additional 86 feet and that the city's accommodation of 150 feet or suggestion doesn't accomplish?
Well, we only have,
Can you please speak in the microphone?
right now, we only have seating for 3, 4, 5, 6 people. That's it. And, you know, between 2 couches, a 3-seater, a 2-seater, and a chair. And that's it. And so we want to use this space for more seating area and a place for people to go, basically. You know, because it's just undersized, basically. So we're a family of 5 right now, soon to be 6, and it's just very tight. And the eating table is for 4 people, so it's very tight.
How many people actually live in your house?
Well, right now it's just the 2 of us, but our kids are all here in town. They all live here in Chicago, so they're over, you know.
Right. Okay. I understand.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Would anybody else like to comment on this case? Sir, Mr. Boa. Please state your name and address for the record.
Carl Bova, 1322 Wellesley Street, about 4 houses down from the east of the Mendelssohns. I live kitty corner from the 1319 building. I say kitty corner. I'm on Wellesley Street. The Lincoln address is obviously on Lincoln. An important point here has been at least partially brought up by the Mendelssohns insofar as we have no alleys. And that does create an unusual circumstance in which not only do you increase the amount of impervious surface, but it does limit it in terms of how you then can use the space as demonstrated by the Mendelssohns. That is a hardship, and it can't be overcome. At any rate, I'd like to read part of my letter to you and then comment a little further about some of my observations about some of the areas that I have seen variances granted and my rationale for not understanding why they were granted and how obnoxious they really are. And I don't think anybody on this board, this present board, has acted on any of these issues. At any rate, the addition will be tastefully executed and add to the tax base. It'll not be visible from the street. Upon my review of the documentation for the case, I find it an unusual burden to suggest, as documented by staff report, that the applicant demolish a perfectly functional living space to avoid a 2% overage. Tacking on a reduced area addition is not reasonable either. Mr. Mendelssohn has gone through some of the economics associated with it, and it's quite frankly not reasonable. By contrast, I've noticed that this body to have granted zoning relief to applicants with far more significant and visible encroachment of one kind or another. Just a couple of doors down to the west, at 2507 Jackson, it's a corner lot. The homeowner almost completely covered his property and avoided the maximum building coverage by buying the house next door, demolishing it, then combining the 2 lots into one. Some might call that shrewd. Who gains from this? By golly, that house meets code, but it surely looks well out of place to see what amounts to an empty lot next to a huge building footprint. There's a net loss in property taxes, so we pay for this one. At 2545 Asbury, which is, I believe, on the corner of Chancellor, the first street north of Central, and Asbury. It's proximate to the golf course. A homeowner, and I remember this vividly, a homeowner gained approval for encroaching well into the 25-foot front setback in the front yard, going from what was once an unweathered, screened-in porch to a four-season space in one zoning appeal. As pointed out earlier, a second action permitted the owner to expand the one-story to 2 stories. Since it faces the street, it is highly visible and clearly stands out from the rest of the block that dutifully maintain the 25-foot setback. At 1319 Lincoln, it extends an excessive distance from front to rear. I believe that house actually goes to the absolute maximum distance it could be from the rear, which is, I believe, 30 feet. It is truly overwhelming and creates a visible wall for all the neighbors to see. No sunlight. It's 2 stories. No windows. Air circulation is blocked. The best that I can say about it is that it is different. Would you like to live next door to this? I might add that that particular addition, being so proximate to my house, has actually caused my property to flood, more so than it did before. As you know, a lot of the rear yards are used for storage of stormwater, and this one encroaches so far into that zone that that storage is lost, and therefore it has no place to go but onto adjacent properties.
Thank you.
None of these situations exist with the Mendelssohn's application, and if Evanston values sustainability as much as it claims, then it is clear that the Mendelssohn's addition is sustainable by continuing to use the existing space rather than demolishing it. In my opinion, it's also unreasonable to expect the Mendelssohns to build a smaller, less functional space. No shrewd maneuvering of lots, no second-time visits to the zoning board, no unsightly wall, no lack of airspace circulation, and no possibility of a decrease in property values. I urge the Zoning Board of Appeals to rule in favor of the Mendelssohns. Clearly, this is a win for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bova. Does anybody else want to speak to this case? Does any other staff want to speak to this case? No? Anybody else? Would you like to sum up your case, sir?
I don't want to take too much of your time, but again, it's we believe this project will have no negative impact, that it is in character with the zoning ordinance and the general plan, and we appreciate your consideration to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to close the record for discussion.
I have a few thoughts. First of all, I would commend the Mendelssohns on the design of the project and frankly on the existing use of the space they have. You obviously have a very good eye for design and care very much about the appearance of your home, and it shows in your proposal. That said, it's not just a little bit. It's 2% over what the zoning ordinance requires. And in order to gain relief from that, we as a board have to find that all of the standards for a variation have been met. Variations are allowed, but only under the conditions that the standards for them are met. And it's only then that we can say, okay, well, 2% is reasonable here or not. In my view, there are several of the standards that are not met here. And I do agree with the zoning administrator's analysis of this. As Carol raised earlier, there's a danger when property owners or even a series of property owners add on to their homes in anticipation of one need and then decide later on that there's a need to continue adding and perhaps continue adding. And in fact, that's exactly what happened here, is you added onto your home in 1999 at a time presumably when your now adult children were actually children living in your home to accommodate the house for those needs. And they're now out of the house and you're wishing to add on space for what you've called a sunroom. And what I interpret from your description is a desire to have more room to entertain in your existing family room. And so in my view, the problem has been created by this owner by virtue of the fact that you did build on in 1999 and you're now facing a problem due to the restrictions that build on has caused you. And I also believe that I believe in the judgment of the zoning administrator that an adequate addition of 150 feet is feasible and would keep you within the requirements of the zoning ordinance. And I would encourage you, in the event the board agrees with me, to reconsider making that addition without the need for a variation. But what you've described is that you are unwilling or unwanting to build to that amount because the square footage cost for building to that smaller amount makes it not worth doing in your eyes. In my view, then there are 2 and possibly 3 of the standards that aren't met, and I can't vote in favor of the proposal.
I'm going to have to mirror Scott's opinion, and I think that we will all tell you that we do not, some of us, maybe even more than others, really want to let property owners do what they want to do with their properties. But the reason that the city establishes zoning standards is so that the community as a whole has a guidepost for what Evanston is going to look like. And there are reasons, as Scott has pointed out, that variances are allowed, but to say that, simply having a larger family room or the lack of a larger family room is in and of itself a hardship is just not going to meet muster. To your neighbor's point, it is always a little bit difficult to say how an addition to a home and then, the pre-existing concrete that is there may affect the flow of water. With the elevated roof line, maybe more is coming off on the sides. There are reasons for the zoning ordinance, and we try really hard to let owners do with their property as they wish within the constraints of the zoning, or if there are very specific hardships, as Scott said. And I have to agree that I'm not seeing a hardship that rises to the standard of subverting the ordinance.
Anyone else like to comment? Okay. We will go on to read the standards. I'm going to defer to my colleague, Scott Gingold. He'll go through the standards. Thank you.
For the zoning board to grant the approval of the variance requested, we must find that these standards all are met. These are the standards for major variations?
Because it's an appeal that has now come to the zoning board, the major variation standards appeal, even though what was done in the minor variation application was a slightly different standards, but that effectively get at the same thing.
Standard number 1, the requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. I believe this standard has been met. There's been positive testimony only submitted from the neighbors that they believe, and documents that they believe that the requested development in excess of the allowable lot coverage would have a positive impact on their use, enjoyment, or property values. So I believe that standard is met. Standard number 2, the requested variation is in keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. While the zoning ordinance does have a general intent to allow property owners to make use of their homes and to build to certain standards, it also imposes a maximum lot coverage, which is at issue in this case, and it only allows variation from those standards under certain circumstances. And because several of them, I believe, are not met, then this variation doesn't keep with that intent. Standard number 3, the alleged hardship or practical difficulty is peculiar to the property. This is a standard size lot on which the owner had an original 1920s house, but extended it in 1999, and at which time the owner exceeded 28% of lot coverage and now seeks to increase it again. Because the owner extended it at one point and now claims a hardship due to the limitations imposed by that decision in 1999, I believe the alleged hardship or practical difficulty here is not peculiar to the property, but is one that the owner created, and I believe that standard is not met. Standard number 4, the property owner would suffer a particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were to be carried out. I believe this standard is not met. In this case, the property owner has expressed a desire to exceed the 30% lot coverage, but has rejected a city proposal that would allow the property to be developed in compliance with the regulations. The stated desire is to add more space for seating and a desire to avoid spending an additional amount of money on a per square foot basis on having a compliant extension. And therefore, I believe the owner has described an inconvenience of carrying out the letter of the regulations rather than a particular hardship in doing so. Standard number 5, the purpose of the variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to extract additional income from the property or a public benefit is provided. I believe this standard has been met. There's no testimony or evidence that the owners are attempting to extract additional income from the property here. Standard number 6, the alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property. I believe this standard has not been met because the hardship is a direct result of the owner's own expansion in 1999 of the property. Standard number 7, the requested variation requires the least deviation from the applicable regulation among the feasible options identified before the Zoning Board of Appeals and City Council. I believe, and the zoning administrator, sorry. In this case, several alternatives were identified to the owner, including one that allows it to comply with the ordinance in terms of lot coverage, and the owner has rejected those, and therefore this variation is not the least deviation possible. I believe that standard hasn't been met.
Thank you, Scott. One moment. Okay, would anyone like, based on Scott's discussion of the standards, would anyone like to make this as a motion to uphold the ZBA decision? The zoning administrator's decision.
I would just ask first if anybody disagrees with my interpretation of the standards.
I'm in agreement.
I'm as well.
I'm good.
Okay, the motion.
I will move then in the matter 17 ZMJV-0041 regarding the property at 1410 Rosalie Street that the zoning board determined to uphold the zoning administrator's decision.
Anybody for a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any proposed? I'm sorry, your motion's not been granted. Thank you for your appearance. Okay, on to the next case in the matter of 2506 Green Bay Road. Is there anyone here to speak for this case? Melissa, please read it into the record.
Marilyn Ferruza, contractor, applies for a special use permit for a public utility, ComEd, and a fence variation. 2506 Green Bay Road is located in the B1A Business District and the OCSC Central Street Overlay District, which requires a special use permit for a public utility, zoning code section 6953. The applicant proposes two concrete walls, fences, that are 16 feet and 20 feet in height where concrete material is not permitted for fences, zoning code section 6467F1, and a maximum fence height of 6 feet is allowed, zoning code section 6467F3. The Zoning Board of Appeals makes a recommendation to City Council, the determining body for this case. Documents included as part of the record include special use application submitted April 24th, 2017, major variation application submitted April 24th, 2017, standards form, zoning analysis, plat of survey, site plans, renderings, image of property, aerial view of property, zoning map of property, Dapper meeting minutes excerpt of May 24th, 2017, as well as a packet of documents submitted prior to tonight's meeting.
Calling it Exhibit 1 for this case. Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, my name is Carlo Cavallero. I'm appearing for Marilyn Peruzza. Address would be 5190 Church in Skokie, 6077. So I'm Carlo Cavallero, External Affairs Manager for Commonwealth Edison. I'm working with our engineers and Marilyn as project manager for, this is referred to as DCC 83. To give you the background on what we're doing and why, what you look at in the attached packet, the DCC 83 is an existing 4 kV station. What we're going through in the process of eliminating, we're in a long term, eliminating 4 kV and transitioning to 12 kV because that is truly the standard of the electrical utility industry for this part. Increased capacity, obviously, go from 4 to 12. Additional reliability, availability of equipment because 12 kV is the standard. And so that's the big picture motivation why this is. The station is one piece of this. We need the variance for the station itself. It's being configured to a DC in a box configuration from the equipment, the original equipment you'll see the new design is basically 5 devices, a transformer, regulators, and a switch. So it's a cleaner look. It's much more modern and efficient. In conjunction with this work, throughout the surrounding neighborhood, which goes for several blocks, there's incidental distribution work to also change the distribution system from 4 kV to 12 kV. So that includes changing transformers and lines and poles and upgrading all those facilities. So this is kind of the central cog in the piece of a major upgrade for the neighborhood is the easiest way to describe it. Our borders, we always get asked, can you tell me a guideline? We don't follow the grid system for our distribution network. So when I say the general area, I think it goes west beyond Ryan Field. It goes actually into Wilmette and then extends south several blocks in either direction. Obviously can't go that far east thanks to the lake. To go through this station, I think with the facility, to get directly to the concrete walls. The concrete walls are part of a new internal standard that ComEd has for fire protection. So that's the baseline rationales for why the walls as a fence instead
Sorry,
of
did you say fire protection or fiber protection?
fire protection. So it's in the unlikely Murphy's Law and Murphy's Law and Murphy's Law that you end up with a fire of the equipment. So that's the standard that's come up as to why this site has had a thermographic study to it. We basically, the configuration of the equipment on the site, along with was factored, and it's designed in the way to have the transformer, as you look at that to the left, and the regulators to the other side, because we only needed the two walls. The height gives you, the height is part of that study going to the facilities, the surrounding properties, to provide that perceived protection. So that's the reason why walls instead of a fence. These devices do not require physical protection. We don't intend for people to be playing on them or around them, but you can walk up to them. It's not that they're inherently unsafe. It's just they do not require the fencing for security purposes. So that's generally the rationale for the wall. I think the other reason for the variance is just simply because we sit in this zoning district as a utility. We're making changes to it. The facility itself, the existing, if you start at the front page color, we're other than the walls, significantly lowering the level footprint for the equipment. Probably the tallest piece of equipment on the site currently now is probably close to 13 to 15 feet. In the end, we'll end up with 9'6", which is the tallest piece, which is the transformer itself. The regulators are about 6 feet, and the switch is I think the switch is about 6 feet. Regulators are about 5 feet. There's spec sheets for everything in here, for the specifics in the back. The last two sheets of the design give you the actual specifics for those heights on the equipment. And not to be brief, but with the time, I'm really just available for questions. If you need anything else, I'm happy to answer that.
Yes, can you clarify, maybe a year ago, ComEd came before the zoning board
DC 54.
for the DC in a box on Church Street. So recalling that, I drove by that one because I don't recall a wall there. And sure enough, there's just a fabric fence. So what I would call a fabric lined fence.
Right.
So is this the first of what will be many applications for all of these type facilities, or why are you asking for this kind of structure here at this DC in a box?
The true answer is it's half yes or maybe. I mean, because it really goes to the spacing, the nature of the equipment. So a DC in a box configuration, depending on what it's adjacent to. Is it it's fire rating? Well, in certain areas, we can't predict what they built next to us. So you go on the site that you are, and we do the thermal dynamic. The internal studies changed, or the internal standards changed literally in the middle of DC 54. If it was perfect and everything was aligned, we probably would have been presenting for the wall, one wall on the eastern side of 54.
The one adjacent to the new YOU facility?
Correct. We would have been presenting that before YOU was even began construction. We would have tackled that issue. At this stage right now, we do have designs to request. Whether that goes forward or not, we haven't determined yet. So it's still a question mark. As to going forward, whether each site would need one, it really is going to depend on what is surrounding the site and what's going to go there. We continue to have part of the benefit of this is there's always new fluids and new equipment and new standards and studies and rationales as they're doing this, because you're really on the worst case kind of practice standards there. And this truly is the highest. It's an internal comment. This is beyond the Illinois Fire Protection or the city code. This is our own internal standards. So we look at those as a one-off. But the beauty of it, we'd be before you again.
How tall is the largest box that's rendered there?
New one, it's the exact height. We didn't have this for the DAP, but we made sure we had it here. It's on. Hold on. I folded it over, that's why I'm not getting to it. The transformer is 9 foot 9 inches and 9 7/8 inches.
Okay, so why do we need a 16 to 20 foot wall?
Because it's through the thermal study for the basically heat dissipates, so it just doesn't go straight up. You've got the heat analysis produce the height of the wall.
Has the thermal study been submitted to zoning?
No,
Who conducted the thermal study?
we have a contractor that does these for all of our facilities.
Okay, when was it conducted?
This spring, I think, February, March.
Is it site specific?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's site specific and equipment specific.
So what is the danger of not having a wall that's more closely approximate to the height of the tallest transformer?
It won't work.
What
I
won't
mean,
work?
it just doesn't meet, so if we employ the standard, our internal standard for whatever the duration for the heat temperature you're predicting in the worst case scenario, and where would it go and how would it dissipate. So you're basically building the wall to contain it for the time period that you think you need to contain it, which is well beyond the response time of either our area operators or the fire department.
Is all of that contained in the study? Is that conclusion?
It's all it does is it does it's just a thermodynamic studies to show where the heat goes and where it dissipates, what the temperatures are.
I get you. I'm not comfortable with a conclusion like that our scientists concluded this is necessary without actually seeing it. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but I'm not comfortable with that answer as evidence to the zoning board of why we need to have a variation for a wall that's 16 to 20 feet high. And I think we recommend to City Council on this. I mean, I would condition anything that we decide on City Council seeing that study and being convinced themselves that this measure is necessary.
That's not a problem.
How much taller is the wall than the height of the building wall adjacent?
To the north?
Yes.
Tom, I'm trying to think of the wall height, what's in I'm trying to think of, the wall mirrors, I think it mirrors to the north, the building to the north, it's the same height, is it not?
I mean, because I think for me, it is more, if it's a safety issue, certainly I think it's a foregone conclusion. But in addition to that, I think it looks better than the chain link fence. But I think that if it dwarfs the height of the building adjacent, it could look monolithic and pleasant.
There's no need for it to be above. It's because even with YOU, it's not going to go above. It was never been proposed to be the same height.
Okay.
So it's just to contain the heat the heat studies. So you have. So they're 16 feet tall, and then we have 20. Where's the height of our wall here?
16 against the building.
16 against the building. But what she's asking, the height of the building wall.
Well, so that it's consistent.
Across the alley.
No, the one right next to it. So as we're looking, the back wall
Against the alley is 20.
against the alley is 20. I know, but
Against the building is 16.
So it's higher than the building against the alley.
Height of the building to the north is 16.
that's what I was getting at. So it matches the height of
Right,
the building.
and that's
which is, I think,
what I'm
what you were
saying.
asking.
Which again, so therefore, even aesthetically, it is.
So why does the alley wall then need to be 20 feet
Yeah.
and not 16?
Because of the proximity to the transformer. The transformer is the device that drives most of this.
The transformer that's in the
is-
large box?
Correct.
That's
To the
9
left.
feet tall?
Yes.
The building across the alley is much taller.
The building that...
Across the alley is.
Yeah,
taller.
okay, I get it. I think at this point, we're trying to figure out what the safety need is versus the aesthetic of what you're planning to build.
Mm-hmm. So this, well, because if you're this height, I mean, it's basically it's all line of sight is the study. So just you can use line of sight as the same thing for how heat dissipates. So that's where, as you get to a certain height where.
So in my interpretation of that, you've got a 9-foot tall transformer, and you've got a 16-foot tall building that's approximately 6 feet away from it, right? And so your line of sight argument is, well, we need a 16-foot tall wall there to protect the 16-foot tall building that's next door,
Right.
right? So why do we need a 20-foot tall wall on the alley side when the nearest structure that we're trying to protect is all the way across the alley?
Because I actually think the transformer is closer to that wall than it is to the other wall, if you look at the footprint.
But it's not closer to the building across the alley.
No, it's not, but you end up with, it's also, you have a brick building. I don't know what the facility, the other building is not, isn't, I don't think it's masonry.
Also 3 stories tall.
Right.
It's 45 feet tall. It's much taller.
I have a question, and this might be for Melissa versus the applicant. This seems like a fire and safety code issue as opposed to a zoning issue. So, I mean, we're calling it a fence because that's the default definition, but I can't interpret fire and safety code, certainly by something that I don't have in front of me, but this seems like a fire and safety code issue as opposed to a zoning issue. So I'm a little perplexed, maybe?
You are correct on all accounts. By zoning definitions, the walls meet the definition of being a fence because they are acting as a barrier. They're not enclosing a building. There is no roof. So we cannot call it a building. By definitions, we call it a fence. The applicant is stating that it is for fire and safety reasons. That needs to play into the standards, and that's why you guys are here.
Is there permitting that needs to take place from a fire and safety standpoint
A permit will be
for the transformer itself?
There's actually, no. I mean, we get general permits for the work being done in the area, and then for the change in the station, there's a general permit because it's an electrical distribution network. So, I mean, what they're going to permit is really just us doing the work. So we apply for the permit to do the general work, but not the specifics. And even if they did a fire safety code, or if it went to them, the standards that we're building to go far beyond the city code. And we can satisfy that, and our contractor would attest to that in a heartbeat.
So
I mean, it's just, sorry.
Who from the city decides what's required from a fire safety standpoint for a project like this?
Fire marshal.
I remember one applicant a long time ago apply, like he wanted to put attach his garage where it was previously detached, and we said that we couldn't do that because there was a fire safety issue and something like that. It's obviously a much different case, but someone's deciding what's required from a fire safety standpoint, right?
I think that falls out of the purview of what we're deciding here, though.
It does, but it doesn't, because in my view, the correct recommendation for us to make is, heck yeah, you can put up a fence that's as high as it needs to be minimally to be safe from a fire standpoint. But I'm not comfortable saying it needs to be 16 feet or 20 feet because A, we don't have the study that concluded that, and B, I don't know.
Well,
so to me, that's the right recommendation.
Yeah, I think,
so it's not
I think
irrelevant.
that you made a correct point, that we make a recommendation for approval based on city council finding that this is consistent with fire safety codes. I mean, I'm fine with that.
We have no problem, because we can circle back with staff and make sure that that they have the information they need, and if we've got to meet with whether it's the fire marshal or the fire department to show them that it goes beyond the safety standards. Because the reality is, when we go, the fire department will show up, but without our area operator, they're going to, they'll either spray foam or wait for us to get there. I mean, it's just really the way these things are monitored 24/7 by us, and they ring directly, so we call the fire department before they're called by anybody else. I mean, that's all extreme circumstances, of course. But to the other point, I don't want to gloss over, for the aesthetics of the wall itself, there's a form liner proposed, the color scheme to be matching the area so it blends in. So we have attempted to accommodate that as well. So I think to your point, we don't want to put up a monolith. We don't want to, we're trying to do what we can to make it look as good as we can.
I'm looking at the construction of the existing facility that you have here, and I know it has nothing to do with DC in a box, but this one will not have any kind of fence along the south wall. It'll just be open like
It can
that?
be open. It can be open because of the spacing. It doesn't need it.
Okay, and then for safety, it does not need to be contained either?
Nope.
Okay.
No, because like even we said, I mean, 54 is at Brown and Church is across from the high school. It's when it's finished, that fence is going to be removed and it's going to have landscaping around it. So it just.
Can I ask just one more question? You monitor the equipment 24/7. Does someone also monitor the individual properties? Because frequently along alleys, when there is a catch-all point like that, there will be a collection of refuse. So is there someone who maintains those areas by going and picking up the?
We would. I mean, so it depends. I mean, if it gets on the alley, I don't know whether that's our responsibility or the city's or whoever, but we get.
Yeah, not the
I
alley,
deal
but
with the staff all
going
the
back
time.
and collecting around the equipment.
Absolutely. Yeah, our crews are in the area all the time, and not to mention that if anyone calls 311, we have a team to take care of everything.
That's actually a great point, because by getting rid of the fence, you're actually creating a litter collection receptacle that's shaped like this. So whatever
Maybe.
blows down the alley or whatever other people throw down on your space is going to collect around these heat-generating transformers that are a threat to create a fire by not having a wall around them.
Well, I wouldn't agree with that last statement, but that's.
I want to ask you several quick questions.
Sure.
So the height of these walls, it's the minimum height that your study recommends.
Yes, that's what we want.
You're
that's what we're
sure
trying to
about
do.
that?
Yeah, because
Okay.
when we reconfigure the equipment.
I understand. I just want to be sure and,
Yes.
and short.
Right.
Second, will this place have lights during night?
Nope, there's no
So
lights.
are you not afraid of people doing some shady things inside?
We have that issue at all the current stations now, and candidly, if they're doing shady things, it may be the last time.
Because the walls will encourage people to do this.
No more than the fences.
It
Well, if
creates a
there's a
hiding place, though.
Yeah,
A
if there's
solid
a chain
hiding
link
Creates a
fence around
hiding
the
place. That's
perimeter, it
my
keeps people
position.
I mean, I guess I mean,
Yeah, but you don't have the practice to put lights.
no.
The next question: are these precast concrete
No, these are spec to be poured in place,
poured in place?
form liners.
How will you beautify them? This is not a zoning question, but
Right. Beautify.
how will you beautify them?
So there's a spec sheet, a cut sheet on the form
You mean
liners.
with the brick thing, or with some reveals?
So there's
Which one of these?
We were specking the one in a red box, number 403. It's a 9x4 smooth brick face design. Because when you pour it in the forms, this is a form liner that just lays in there. So when the concrete forms, it's permanently impressed in.
Are you putting caps,
Pardon me?
coping caps on the walls, or no?
No, it's just a flat, finished wall, finished roof, cap.
This is again not zoning, but be careful with that because it becomes ugly very soon. Thank you.
Is the material for the wall any kind of special concrete, or is it just
Concrete.
garden variety concrete?
Garden variety concrete.
So
I'm sure
it's
for
not-
wall. I'm not a concrete expert, so it's wall grade versus whether it's any different. If that's any different than street, I don't know, but it's.
I'm not a concrete expert either, and I'm not a wall expert either, but is there any other material you've considered that might better absorb or reflect the heat you're worried about transmitting?
Concrete's pretty good. So, I mean, it's the best material that we'd come up with, plus you factor in cost. So I'm sure there's something that could probably be better, that would be more expensive, but I don't know what that would be. And if we're not familiar with it and it's not industry standard, we're not going to try it out.
Have you been seeking approvals and have these DCs in a box with the accompanying walls in other communities?
I don't know that, I haven't, this is my first one with the walls. The standard went into place just within the last last year or so. So, and then again, it depends on the configuration. We have many of these DC in a boxes that are in transmission right-of-ways, which there's nothing adjacent to them, so they wouldn't need anything. So when we end up in more of the urban area, then yes, they would.
Any other questions for this applicant? Does anyone else want to speak in this case? Sir, would you like to sum it up?
I know that, based on the condition to provide a report, we're happy to provide that information and make sure everyone knows everything and meet with whoever on staff or fire marshal or the department to go through those details before it goes to city council.
Okay.
No problem.
Thank you. We'll close the case for deliberation. What do we think?
I think it sounds like this is necessary. I think that the wall is aesthetically more pleasing than the fence that was there. I do agree with Carol that I would really like to see lights on that area as a matter of public safety in the alleyway and, probably a slightly more pleasant venue overall, just walking down the alley. So I don't know if that's something that the contractors would consider, but I think that might be a good idea. Other than that, I think that we certainly would, I would be inclined to approve this project predicated on its necessity as a safety measure and also because on balance, I think it is aesthetically very much acceptable.
I agree with Muffy's comments. My question would be is if we talk about lighting the site, whether there would be light pollution that would spill over. I think it's an adjacent residential building just to the west of that alley, and if I have my bedroom window looking out over the site, I'd rather see a dark brick wall than a lit DC in a box spilling into my bedroom window. So that would be my only concern with talking about lighting the site.
I think that's a good point, although I think there could be lighting added that the concern for the lighting for me, and it sounded like for Carol when he raised it, is that by putting up a wall around something in an alley, you may be encouraging bad elements to hide in the dark around the transformers and do whatever they would do there. And so I would think there could be an accommodation of a certain amount of light or a certain type of lighting that discourages that behavior and also doesn't create a visual problem for residential neighbors.
Well, and you have a fairly high wall that could conceal the lighting, and it can be
20-foot wall.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe they could erect another wall for the light dispersion.
Well, once again, you've probably had experience with these things at other locations, but I agree with Carol in an urban setting. My experience is that nice little dark nooks and crannies and alleyways sometimes invite uncivil conduct.
So just in my view, I agree. I think this is a safety issue, and I think we should recommend that City Council approve some form of a fence, and whatever the right height is should be City Council's determination. But in my view, the conditions we should impose on the recommendation are, one, the addition of lighting that mitigates against the safety hazard created by enclosing a space with concrete walls, and two, that the heat dispersion study that was conducted that gives rise to the conclusion that these are the appropriate wall heights be shared with City Council in advance of the meeting so they can make that determination. I
actually agree with you all when you talk about this security issues in especially because it is so close to the school, and there is a new residential right across the hallway, across the alleyway from it. I do agree that some type of camera, some type of softer light, it's not really a fence when it's a concrete wall. It's not see-through. You can't see anybody standing back there. And I did see cars parked adjacent to it as well. I'd hate to park there if it was a solid 20-foot fence and it was very dark back there. So I think that you should look at that issue as well.
I agree.
I don't have other comments.
Okay. Okay, I understand that since this is both a special use request for the DC in a box, that we will be reading the standards for a special use, and then we will read the standards for a major variation based on the fence request. So it's going to be long, but we'll go through it. Okay, standards for a special use. The requested special use is one of the special uses listed in the zoning ordinance. I do believe that has been met. Number 2, the requested special use is in keeping with the purposes and policies of the comprehensive general plan and the zoning ordinance as amended from time to time, and utilities upgrade are included in that, so that standard has been met. The requested special use will not cause a negative cumulative effect when its effect is considered in conjunction with the cumulative effect of various special uses of all types in the immediate neighborhood and the effect of the proposed type of special use upon the city as a whole. Since the DC in the box technology is new and has been moving into all of the sites in Evanston, I believe that standard has been met. The requested special use does not interfere with or diminish the value of property in the neighborhood. I believe that standard has been met. Does anyone agree?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it enhances the value by bringing the existing equipment up to a better performing standard.
Great. Number 5, the requested special use can be adequately served by public facilities and services. I think this standard will be met when the fire department actually looks at this thermodynamic and determines if they can adequately serve this public facility. Does anybody agree?
I agree. I'm not sure this. Yeah, I agree.
Because we can't make that determination. I mean, I can't anyway. Okay. Number 6, the requested special use does not cause undue traffic congestion. I think that's non-applicable in this point. Number 7, the requested special use preserves significant historical and architectural resources. I think that's non-applicable in this point. The requested special use preserves significant natural and environmental features. I'm not sure that that's even applicable in this point. And number 9, the requested special use complies with all other applicable regulations of the district in which it is located and other applicable ordinances, except to the extent of such regulations have been modified through the plan development process or the grant of a variation. I believe that standard has been met.
I believe that it needs to be met and that the determination will be made whether it can be met when we figure out what the actual safety requirements are for the walls that will go with the use.
So for the purposes of this committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right, now for the fence. Okay, the standards for major variation.
Should we vote on the special use?
You want to vote on that separately?
I think we should. I don't know that the outcome will be different, but I think we should. It's a
Okay.
different.
Okay. Anyone want to make the motion for the special use for the utility ComEd going to DC in a box?
Yes, I move that we recommend that the special use be granted on the condition that the property be developed in accordance with the evidence and documents submitted and to be submitted with respect to the study, the heat dispersion study.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Special use has been granted. Now we'll go through the standards for major variation, and this is applicable for the fence, the 16 and 20-foot concrete wall fences around the DC in a box. Okay, the first standard. The requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of the adjoining properties. Any comments?
I believe the standard has been met. I think visually it's an improvement to the property, and therefore the standard has been met.
Any opposition? Okay, number 2. The requested variation is in keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. Any comments?
I think that the zoning ordinance allows for variations such as the type requested, particularly when safety is an issue, which is the necessity for this variation, and therefore it is within the intent of the zoning ordinance for us to grant it.
Any other comments? Okay, standard has been met. Number 3, the alleged hardship or practical difficulty is peculiar to the property. Any comments? Not applicable. Okay. Number 4, the property owner would suffer a particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were to be carried out. Not that this is so very applicable, but I do believe that you do need a wall around this, concrete. I haven't seen the study. I don't know if it needs to be 16 or 20 feet.
Well, I don't think it's about the applicant suffering a hardship. I think it's about the neighboring parties suffering a hardship if there is danger from fire that can be addressed by this wall that is not addressed. So I think the standard by all means has been met.
Any opposition? Okay, standard has been met. Number 5, the purpose of this variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to extract additional income from the property or a public benefit is provided. I see the public benefit as being provided in the upgrade of the utilities, so I feel like this standard has been met. Any comments? Number 6, the alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property. I think this is non-applicable. Number 7, the requested variation requires the least deviation from the applicable regulation among the feasible options identified before the Zoning Board of Appeals issues its decision or recommendation to the City Council regarding said variation. Any discussion?
I think that's to be determined based on the heat dispersion study that we will recommend be included with City Council packet before they review this case.
Okay.
So based on the testimony that's been presented here, I think that standard has been met, but it needs to be confirmed based on seeing that study.
Okay, I agree. Would you like to make a motion? With your testimony, with what you just said?
I'll make a motion then. Sure. In the matter ZBA 17 ZMJV-0035 with respect to the property at 2506 Green Bay Road, I move that we, is this a recommend? I move that we recommend to City Council that they grant the major variation requested on the following conditions. 1, that the city have received in advance and considered ComEd's, the study ComEd commissioned that's specific to this property and specific to this design that studies the effects of heat dispersion from these transformers.
And the minimum height needed in order from a fire and safety perspective.
Yep. Okay. So condition 2 is that the variation should be granted, but only to the minimum extent required for concrete wall/fences to be erected that meet the requirements of that heat dispersion study. 3, that the property owner / project developer be required to include lights on the interior and or exterior of these walls to the extent necessary to mitigate against the safety problem caused by building a 16 to 20 foot high concrete wall enclosure. And 4, that the property otherwise be developed in accordance with the testimony and documents submitted.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Your issue will pass on, and we make a recommendation, a positive recommendation to the City Council. Any other business?
As you guys know, I have been emailing you relentlessly, trying to find when we can throw in an extra zoning board meeting. Last one that I sent was looking at July 11th, 12th, or 13th, and I don't remember which two of you have not responded yet, but we need to know.
I'll sheepishly stick my head up and tell you I didn't respond, but
All right,
I
you
need
were
to
one-
check something first.
Okay, if you can let me know as soon as possible. Whoever the other one was, I'll bug you tomorrow then. I left my list upstairs.
Look at me.
I didn't look at you. I didn't.
That I don't know. She's out of town right now, so I haven't heard from her. But thank you for your continued effort to try to make another meeting work. I know it's hard. I know we meet twice a month typically. We do appreciate it.
Are we having a CMAP meeting this month?
Yes, that is June 27th at 5:30, 5 o'clock? 5 o'clock. I will send out a reminder email a couple days before, but I do encourage everyone to attend. I know we did one a year or so ago, and of those on the zoning board who went, they said it was very beneficial. So I do encourage you to attend.
And where will that be? Where will it be?
It's, yep,
Parasol Room.
fourth floor directly above.
Is there a meeting right after that or something I saw?
That was one of the potential dates, but
It's not.
not at this point.
Okay.
Correct, and we do have a full agenda for that meeting.
Okay.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.